In the year 2079 in Washington, America, a former CIA agent named Snow was arrested and interrogated by the head of the Secret Service, Scott Langell, for allegedly killing Colonel Frank Armstrong while he was on a mission at a motel in New York. Snow denied that, but Scott was not accusing without reason because he had recording evidence that clearly showed Snow shooting Frank to death. Apart from that, according to the CIA's investigation, it turned out that Colonel Frank was the one who arranged the meeting at the motel, and he had secret state information in the form of a space program. Snow convinced Scott that he had been framed and that the recording had been faked because that night Frank was seriously injured by enemy fire, and at his last moment, he gave Snow a lighter and told him to protect his package in the suitcase. After that, Snow was interrogated by one of his friends, a CIA agent named Harry Shaw, who believed that he was innocent. Because they knew Scott was watching them from behind the one-way glass, Snow didn't say anything in detail and instead scribed mace on the table with the cigarette ashes. Snow asked Shaw to pick up an item that he didn't know where it was because the last time he saw it, it was thrown onto the train to be taken by Snow's contact, Mace, before he was caught. Mace, on the other hand, was seen keeping the suitcase in the station locker, which could only be opened with an access code, but after he left the locker, his gun fell and accidentally shot a police officer, and he ended up being arrested. Scott went to the White House to report to the 56th President of America about the case of the murder of Colonel Frank, and Mr. President told Scott to immediately kill Snow. The President's daughter, Emily, was on a space shuttle with her bodyguards, one of whom was Hawk, and her assistant and friend, Catherine. They were on their way to a maximum security space penitentiary called MS-1. The warden Barnes was also on the plane, explaining that MS-1 was the only prison in the world without physical torture and sexual harassment, because all the prisoners there were left in a state of stasis, but the facility was still in the experimental phase. Later, all countries in the world would be able to transfer their prisoners to MS-1. The facility was under America's control, and the prisoners there were the most dangerous people. So Emily's goal in going there was to find out whether MS-1's prisoners were being used as guinea pigs for research on human life in outer space, because it was reported that the stasis caused many side effects such as brain damage, which led to mental instability for the prisoners. They all arrived at MS-1 and were given radiation necklaces, which would be triggered and light up if a problem was detected in there. After that, Emily and her staff were stunned to see how sophisticated the prisoners' capsule installations were. Emily was also invited to interview a prisoner named Heidel, who was taken out of his prison capsule and was also awakened from his stasis state. But before that, all the weapons they were carrying had to be deposited first, and Hawk succeeded in hiding a gun in his left leg as a precaution. Meanwhile, after the interrogation, Snow was temporarily detained at the CIA office. Scott explained that he would be sentenced to a stasis procedure in MS-1 for 30 years for first-degree murder and conspiracy to espionage against America. Strangely, Snow didn't go through court first and couldn't put forward a defense at all. In MS-1, Emily had started her interview with Heidel about his experiences while in prison. They were limited by security glass, and Heidel was also still handcuffed and guarded by two of Emily's bodyguards, including Hawk. From the start of the conversation, Heidel didn't answer seriously and even dared to insult Emily. Hawk, who was furious, ordered Heidel to answer correctly. But Heidel continued to provoke, and finally, Hawk got emotional and attacked him. Heidel didn't waste this opportunity because it turned out he realized that Hawk had a gun on one of his legs and took it when Hawk pinned him down. He created chaos and was freed. Emily, whose left leg was shot, immediately hid in the control room. Not long afterward, Heidel came into the room and ordered the scientists to open all the prison capsules in MS-1 and wake up the 497 prisoners from their stasis condition. Among all the freed prisoners, there was a very dangerous criminal, namely Alex, Heidel's older brother, who then led the revolt in MS-1. On the other hand, unfortunately, Heidel caught Emily and wanted to rape her. Luckily, Alex arrived on time and stopped him because he planned to use Emily and her bodyguard, Barnes, as well as MS-1's staff, as hostages so that all the prisoners would be freed and returned to Earth. The prisoners, including Alex and Heidel, did not know that Emily was the daughter of the President of America. The LOPD, the police unit that handled crimes in the atmosphere and outer space, had sent several planes to MS-1 which would investigate the emergency signal from the facility. Initially, Alex wanted to read the situation, but suddenly Heidel dragged the MS-1 staff to activate the protective gun and immediately shot at all the planes outside. Meanwhile, on Earth, Scott had reported to Mr. President about the chaos at MS-1 involving his daughter Emily. The telemetry health transmitter worn by Emily revealed that she was still alive despite having a gunshot wound to her left leg. Scott explained that special forces could be sent there within 6 hours, but Shaw was sure the prisoners at MS-1 would definitely kill all the hostages at once when they found out that special forces would be sent there. Therefore, Shaw suggested sending one person to save Emily secretly, namely Snow, because apart from being tough and having fighting skills above average, Snow was also burdened with the murder case of Colonel Frank, and the mission to MS-1 was considered his punishment. Hearing that, Snow refused, but in the end, he was willing to carry out the mission after Shaw secretly said that Mace was currently on MS-1. At the space shuttle, on their way to LOPD headquarters, Scott explained that there were 497 prisoners in MS-1, and if Snow succeeded in rescuing Emily, he had to take her to the escape pod on level 5. Scott also gave a mini-map to the escape pod and would show the access code. After that, Shaw handed over a bong shaped like a bicycle key which would explode if the two ends were connected. In MS-1, all the prisoners have been released. Catherine gave a doctor's coat to protect Emily and bandaged the wound with a torn piece of Hawk's shirt. On the other hand, one crazed prisoner forced his way to escape his way out of there. Alex had no other choice but to finish him off. However, because Alex's hand was cut, he told his crew to call a doctor to stitch up the wound. Emily was immediately dragged away because they thought she was a doctor. When Snow and the others arrived at LOPD headquarters, Scott immediately took over command there and communicated with Alex via video call. Emily was seen on the screen sewing up the wound on Alex's hands, and Alex threatened to kill the hostages one by one every hour. The first victim was the head warden Barnes, who was thrown out of space without an astronaut suit on. On the other hand, seeing Alex's response, none of the prisoners in MS-1 knew that Emily was the president's daughter. Seeing the situation in MS-1, Scott sent a negotiator to buy time and observe how many hostages were through the camera embedded in the man's glasses, while Shaw sent Snow to MS-1 by secretly hiding in the wing of the shuttle. The negotiator explained that the media had highlighted this revolt, so sooner or later the government would cover up the case with another case or send special forces to MS-1, meaning Alex would not be able to be freed from MS-1 no matter how many hostages he killed later. That was why the negotiator gave a solution, namely freeing several prisoners, and if they were willing to hand over one of the prisoners, especially the injured woman. Of course, what the man meant was Emily. However, when Emily was being carried out of the detention room, Heidel acted up again by forbidding Emily to leave and shoot Catherine because he liked Emily. At LOPD headquarters, after seeing the commotion from the negotiator's glasses, Shaw immediately told Snow to sneak into MS-1, but instead, Snow was caught by one of the prisoners who was on guard. Because the wound was too serious, Catherine finally died. Meanwhile, after a prisoner reported that Snow had infiltrated MS-1, Alex immediately shot the negotiator dead and ordered his younger brother, Heidel, to hunt Snow down, while Emily and Hawk were escorted back by a prisoner, but they took this opportunity to escape by fighting the prisoner in the elevator. Snow, who had just arrived at MS-1, was also directed by Shaw to the detention room and was about to pass through the same elevator. On the other hand, Alex found a leaflet of the current American president and finally found out that Emily was the daughter of the president. After killing the prisoner, Emily thought that Snow was a prisoner, so she knocked him out with a fire extinguisher. Emily ran away with Hawk to a room and Hawk destroyed the lock system so it couldn't be opened from the outside. However, this had an impact on the oxygen levels in the room, which were slowly depleting and would kill them. In the end, Hawk decided to shoot himself so that the oxygen in the room didn't run out quickly and Emily could stay alive. Meanwhile, because the room had a tight lock, Snow had to find another way to get in there, but he had to hurry because Alex came with a technician to open the room. Before entering the ventilation to Emily's room, Snow had time to look for where Mace's capsule, but when he entered the ventilation to Emily's room, it turned out that an inmate was following him and he had to fight him at the top of a spinning generator fan. Thankfully, he managed to get out of the problem and then broke into the top wall of the room. He found Emily had fainted because the oxygen level had run out. Snow was then guided to revive her using a mini pacemaker, injecting nerve stimulant fluid into the brain through Emily's eyes, and providing breathing assistance. Meanwhile, outside the room, Alex and the technician were trying to open the locked room. After Emily woke up, Snow immediately took her away via the ventilation, and right after that, Alex and the technician managed to open the room, but as soon as they entered, Snow immediately threw a bomb from above. When Snow and Emily were crawling on the ventilation, Shaw's voice was so loud that it was heard by Alex. For precaution, Snow planted bombs along the route to protect them from approaching prisoners. After hearing the voice, Alex ordered the MS-1 communications staff cut off the signal from outside, and like it or not, Snow had to continue the journey without guidance from Shaw. They both fell from the ventilation, but fortunately the situation there was safe. They went to the first aid room and Snow helped heal Emily's gunshot wound. He also explained that he was sent by Mr. President on a mission to save only Emily, not including the other prisoners. Upon hearing that, Emily insisted that the MS-1 staff also be saved, but Snow ignored her. Snow gave Emily a shotgun and a mini-map to help her, then told her to run away first to the escape pod because he wanted to go looking for Mace first, but Snow was forced to accompany Emily because apart from not being able to read the map, Alex also showed Emily's photo from her name tag and all the prisoners were ordered to hunt her down. To make it safer, Snow forced Emily to change her appearance to be like the other prisoners, such as wearing prison clothes and cutting and dyeing her hair, and then he punched her face to make it look even more tattered. Of course, Emily was furious, but she had no other choice because there were almost 500 inmates in MS-1 who would capture her because they know her identity. After finding out about Emily, Alex threatened the president through Scott that all of them would torture Emily if they were not released, and after hearing that, Mr. President immediately flew to LOPD headquarters. Meanwhile, Snow also wore a prisoner uniform so that the inmates wouldn't suspect him. Along with Emily, they decided to enter the prison area and pass through a crowd of prisoners while looking for Mace, but their disguise didn't last long because they met a prisoner who asked for the password, which they didn't know. They managed to escape to a room and luckily, Mace was there, but strangely he looked dazing and kept repeating random words. Emily was sure that Mace was experiencing dementia, which was a side effect of the stasis, meaning he couldn't explain where he kept the secret suitcase. They had to immediately escape because Alex and the other prisoners were trying to break into the door. Snow was in such a hurry that he didn't realize that he was running away to a dangerous, high-radiation area. When they entered, the necklace that Emily was wearing immediately made a sound and flashed because she was in an area with high radiation, but luckily, they managed to escape without being noticed. Suddenly, MS-1 collided with the International Space Station, which caused the glass near Mace to shatter. Several doors closed automatically and separated Mace from Snow and Emily. Snow kept telling Mace to press the emergency button, but because of dementia and dazing, Mace didn't understand at all. When Snow looked for a stick to pry open the door, Mace stammeringly said, "I see you. I foresee you." Apart from that, he also mentioned words such as locker, suitcase, lullaby, and green. Snow kept prying open the door, but unfortunately, oxygen depleted until finally, Mace froze to death. According to the observations of scientists at LOPD headquarters, it turned out that it was not the ISS that hit MS-1, but the other way around, and MS-1 would fall to the east coast of America in about 8 hours. Meanwhile, Snow and Emily continue their journey and finally arrive at the escape pod. However, because it could only accommodate one passenger, Snow forced Emily to escape, while he reasoned that he was going to ride another escape pod. Before leaving, Emily asked what Snow's real name was and Snow promised to tell her who he was after they met again on Earth. After that, the escape pod flew from MS-1 and the people at LOP headquarters, including Scott and Shaw, were very happy to see it because they thought Snow had succeeded in saving Emily even though Snow was still in MS-1. But it turned out that Emily decided not to enter the escape pod because she wanted to save the captives there and it was impossible for her father to send an attack if she was still in there. She also said that Mace had told her where the suitcase was before he died, but she would only explain the location if Snow wanted to help the hostage, which in the end he agreed. On Earth, since there was no signal from the MS-1, nobody knew exactly what was going on in there and Mr. President still thought that Snow had managed to save Emily and would still launch an attack on MS-1. Heidel broadcasted to all of MS-1 that he would kill the hostages one by one if Emily continued to hide. Emily was forced to tell her and Snow's location so that Heidel would stop killing the hostages, but after finding out Emily's position, Heidel still shot all the remaining MS-1 staff in the control room. Snow immediately took Emily to flee to another floor which would have been safer, but when they were in the elevator, Emily admitted that she actually didn't understand the meaning of Mace's words, and she deliberately tricked Snow into saving the hostages. Suddenly, the elevator got stuck and they arrived at a secret lab that used prisoners as guinea pigs. It turned out that Emily's guess was right, and that meant the MS-1 staff were no less evil than the prisoners. Without them realizing it, Alex was already behind Snow and was pointing his gun. Snow fell into the elevator shaft while Emily was finally caught. After returning to the control room, Alex was furious with his younger brother Heidel, who killed all the MS-1 staff at will, even though those people could be used as hostages or maybe controlling MS-1. After that, Alex activated the signal in the facility so he could communicate with Scott. On the other hand, Shaw finally was able to contact Snow, who explained that his mission to get Mace had failed and Emily had been caught. Shaw explained that MS-1 would fall to Earth and Snow had to get out of there immediately while wearing an astronaut suit. Meanwhile, Scott informed the prisoners about MS-1's condition and asked that the LOPD troops be allowed to go up to the facility to readjust MS-1's position, or they wouldn't hesitate to attack the place from the outside without thinking about the fate of everyone inside. Alex forced Emily to tell her father so that the attack would be cancelled, but with courage, Emily asked her father to immediately blow up the prison because, after all the staff had also been killed. Seeing the increasingly chaotic conditions, Scott asked Mr. President to allow the attack on MS-1. Obviously, Mr. President refused because his daughter was still there, but Scott showed the signatures of the Vice President and the Congressman agreeing that Mr. President be temporarily dismissed from his position as President because he was deemed unable to put national security above personal interests. In the end, Scott ordered LOPD to send troops to MS-1 before it hit the Earth. Instead of panicking because LOPD would attack MS-1, Heidel got mad at his brother because he wasn't allowed to rape Emily. He immediately stabbed Alex to death. While outside, LOP troops tried to infiltrate MS-1 while fighting the facility's defense system. On the other hand, Heidel was still trying to rape Emily, and when he was about to stab her in the stomach with a knife, Snow suddenly showed up and stopped the knife with his bare hand before it punctured Emily's stomach. Snow and Emily managed to escape to a room that fortunately had 2 astronaut suits there so they could escape from MS-1. They both had to be quick because the LOPT troops had installed a bomb on MS-1 that would explode in about 30 seconds. Fortunately, in the 15th second, they had put on astronaut suits and were also preparing to jump. MS-1 was completely destroyed, but thankfully both Emily and Snow managed to survive even though Emily fainted in the air. Snow was immediately arrested because he was still burdened with the murder case of Colonel Frank. While Emily was being treated in the hospital, she kept thinking about Mace's rumblings, and because she was curious, she was determined to run away from the hospital and went to Union Station, where she found a green locker with the word lullaby written on it. She entered the password ICUI4CU, which read, "I see you, I foresee you." It turned out that everything Mace said was a clue. The locker was opened and she managed to get the suitcase. After that, she went to check the crime scene where Colonel Frank was killed by Snow. It turned out that there was a door made of a mirror in the room, and she realized that the footage seen by Scott didn't show the whole thing because, in reality, Snow was shooting at the actual assassin at the same time that Frank was shot, meaning that Snow was innocent. After finding the evidence, Emily immediately met her father at the White House and showed him the suitcase. A few moments later, Mr. President gave the suitcase to Snow, who then met Shaw in the interrogation room to tell him that he had gotten the suitcase. Shaw looked surprised to hear that, and strangely he was able to open the code for the suitcase, but there was nothing in it, proving that the real mole was Shaw because he knew the code to the suitcase even though no one told him about it. After investigation, it was revealed that Shaw was paid a lot of money by a group to sell state secrets about the space program, while Frank, who knew about his rottenness, planned to save state secrets. Shaw's true nature finally showed up and started cursing at Snow. He didn't care about Frank's death as long as he could make a profit. Snow, who was fed up and couldn't control his emotions, immediately burned Shaw's eyes with a lighter. Shaw ended up in prison, and Scott was shocked to find out that Shaw was the mole and the problems faced by Snow only started from an empty suitcase. Thanks to the evidence, Snow was freed of the charges. When Snow left the building, he checked the lighter he got from Frank, and it turned out to contain a micro SD that held many state secrets related to the space program. It turned out that Frank had moved the secrets to a micro SD hidden in the lighter and emptied the suitcase in case it fell into the hand of Shaw or someone who wanted it. After that, Emily, who had been waiting for Snow, approached him and said that she already knew Snow's full name from the army, namely Marion, and she made fun of it.